Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon. I hope everyone is doing okay and ready for another exciting episode of BESA, Become a Solutions Architect. We'll be talking about lots and lots of interesting stuff today, too. And we appreciate all of you still being with us on week 7. We hope you are enjoying and learning few new things. And if you have any suggestions, any feedback, let us know and we would try to accommodate it. Some of you may be joining us for the first time. So just to give an idea, we conduct these sessions and by Monday you all will be getting an email in which we would be sharing the link for resources. Now, just as a warm-up activity, tell me the last series you watched on either Netflix or Prime. Anyone who watched any new series, any inspiration you could give me to spend my weekend. I will tell about myself. I watched Fallout on Amazon Prime. I'm not sure how anyone of you have watched it or not, but an interesting series. And if you have any other recommendation or if you watched anything very interesting, let me know. Hopefully that would give me some idea and others also some idea to spend little more time on Netflix. Laptop Ladies is great on Netflix. I haven't. Lapata Ladies. Oh, sorry. I'm always thinking about like technology. Yeah, I watched that Parna. It's a nice one. I agree on that. Hira Mandi. Watch that too. I'm spending too much time. Money Heist. Okay, good one. And uh, what else? Movie Shaitan. This Naveen I watched while I was returning from Stockholm day before yesterday. So the ending was not very interesting, but yeah, it was a good plot, but not that very interesting ending at all. Uh, चाचा विधायक हैं हमारे. Okay, I like that. Nice. Thank you everyone. And yeah, these are some of the good things I can spend my time on. I just watch recaps on YouTube. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Thank you, Ruth. And okay, nice. So I'll add other members of the team to the channel so that you could see who all are going to help you today. So I'll add Prasad, and then I have Nicole, we have Sharik, and obviously we have Parna too. Some people could not join this time. Remy is busy with his kids, and Richard is busy too, and probably Kapil is traveling. But yeah, we will be happy to answer as many questions as you have. So please feel free to answer question. And we will be talking about security track today, and hopefully you have seen the teaser. So we'll be talking about the great firewall. Obviously there are multiple components into security and we will try to cover some of them. And I'll let Nicole and Sharik drive the conversation today. We will do in the same manner, role play manner, and hopefully it would give you an idea that how conversation with customers happen. And keep your questions coming. We are monitoring chat. We would be happy to answer. And by the end, I'll talk about some of the analogies so that you can relate to these concepts in a day-to-day life. So over to you, Nicole and Sharik. I am removing others from the stream and we are in background.
Hello, Sharik. So
Hi, Nicole.
my team said you are here to take away all my concerns about cloud.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. so I'm the CISO of this lovely company, and as you can tell, I might not sleep that well most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was talking to my team about, so how do we keep all these things secure in the cloud? I can't touch whatever is keeping us secure. I don't see it, and I don't have any control over it because it sits in your data centers. So, right. And they started to talk to me about, yeah, don't worry. They have security groups. They have Knuckles. They have WAF. They have network firewalls. They have all these other kinds of things. I'm like, all I need is a firewall to keep things safe, like really, really safe. And I don't need 10 different things that just confuse everybody. So can you explain to me, so how do I set these up? What are these things? And can I manage them in an efficient manner? And most importantly, can I control and check that things are done correctly?
Oh yes, you can do all those things. Definitely, you can check. Yeah, so let's get started. So today's topic, we are going to talk about security, right? That's the thing which you want to discuss, and of course, you are the CISO. So your prime job responsibility is to make sure everything is looking good, health wise, and there are no breaches. And I can only assume that you will have a lot of you're like 24/7 kind of on the hook, given the environment we have today, the amount of DDoS attacks and things like that, right? So yes, one of the primary responsibilities we have generally as IT experts, as technology experts, as cloud experts, is to secure our environment. And as we say in AWS or in Amazon in general, is security is job day zero, right? So we start about and talk about security right from the inception. We don't wait for towards the end, or in DevOps as well, you have this concept of DevSecOps, which means that shifting left. I guess you must have had those discussions in your company with different stakeholders, especially I'm assuming DevOps engineers, right? So they would be talking about this day zero concept. So yeah, we'll talk about that. How about this, Nicole? Let's take a kind of again a step back. And let me share my screen. What we are going to do is I am actually on the console. What I have done is I have already gone to this page. We'll put this link in the chat window, but this is the home page. First we'll understand what do we mean by when we say security, right? And so what do you think of when you say security from a holistic perspective? What are the things comes to your mind? Like, let me put them probably in a somewhere.
So what comes to my mind is that nothing should be available to everyone. I want really granular, control over who can access what and for how long.
Can I put that as access management?
Yes, you can put this as access management.
Okay. And a very important concept, a very important aspect of security. Very good, thank you. What else you think about?
The other thing that is really important to me is accountability and being able to track who has been doing what, right? We had cases where people, did very, very stupid things and nobody obviously admitted to it. If I can track who did what, when, I can at least get a record of what has happened, and I can find out who did it, and we can make sure this, never happens again. So that's really important to me. But the other thing is,
hold that thought. I'm sorry to interrupt. Hold that thought, because you mentioned about something about you used a word. I'll talk about that in just a moment. Have you heard of this, the 3 A's of security? Has this discussion ever come up in your discussions with your engineers and managers and everybody else?
Yes, it has come up, but for some reason, I'm not sure if I'm boring them or if they just forget. If I say, hey, what are the 3 A's? They usually make it to 1 A. I hear different A's, but nobody gets all 3 A's.
All 3. Let's see. Let's take a pause here, Nicole, and let's see if our audience can come up with that. So, folks, if you're familiar with that, the 3 A's, would you mind putting that in the chat window? Let's see how many of us are aware of that. And of course, we'll talk probably 2-3 minutes on that, just to make sure everybody understands that. I'll give you like maybe 10-20 seconds just to put everybody. This is going to be interesting, Nicole. What is that?
My staff is incompetent. Well, I won't argue with that one, but this is why we're here, right?
we all have our ups and downs. Let's put it this way, yeah. Okay, so I'm getting some responses: authentication, authorization, and accountability. Perfectly, thank you. I see some of us are very informed here. So yes, authentication, and we have authorization, and then of course we have something called accounting, right? So this is the word you actually used, which kind of triggered in my head that, oh, 3 A's, we should talk about this. Anyway, so authentication, I guess everybody understands authentication is the process when you prove that you are who you say you are, right? And how do you prove that? You have different, you put your user ID, you put all those things, right? So probably fingerprint or something, and then you prove, you log in to the system, right? To somewhere, to a system, to an application, by proving that you are the right person. You're not impersonating. The second part is authorization. Now, this is where authorization is, let's say, once you have logged into a system, right? So you are in the application now. So what are the things you can do, and what are the things you cannot do? So you will have access based on your job role. Now, of course, in our example, if let's say we are working in the same team, you are the CISO of the team, so you will have probably much larger, much bigger access, because you need to take care of the whole platform. You need to know everything at any given point in time. Whereas if I am an IT engineer, I will have limited access to the environment only for the job role. In fact, this is where will probably everybody has heard of it. If not, make sure you spend some time on that and try and understand. We have this concept of RBAC, which stands for role-based access control. When we talk about access management, this is a very important concept, and you will find that on-prem, you will find that on cloud, you'll find that on Kubernetes, you'll find on containers, serverless. Irrespective of which platform you're working, you will hear that word RBAC a lot. And another kind of, a little bit, a small variant of that would be something called least required access or least required privilege. At a very high level, the concept is very simple, that I should be given access only to the things which I'm supposed to have as part of my job role, what I need to perform my job role. Nothing more, nothing less. Very simple, right? Now, how do you do that? Again, that's a different story. We can talk about that. Probably we'll discuss. We have something called policies. We'll come to that. So that's authorization. Accounting is basically, it's in other words, we can call this as auditing, or anything which has to do with investigation, right? So we have an environment. We have, I don't know, 10,000 instances. We have multiple containers and virtual machines, and we have probably 500 employees in the company, and everybody is performing their job. If, let's say, today I need to check that something has happened, let's say last week, a small incident had happened, and we need to investigate, we need to find out, we need to find the root cause, right? So root cause analysis, I think everybody is familiar with the concept. When you need to do that, you need to have some sort of audit trail. You need to find out who has done what and when. Only then you can, decipher and understand what is going on and everything. So for whatever purpose, when you need to have that audit trail, that is when you would need that accounting part. And that's, again, just to give you a teaser here. So we have this service called CloudTrail, which keeps a track of all the API calls and gives you this answer that, okay, who has done what? Every single API call is being logged, or you have the ability to log them. And if you want to find out later on what was done by whom and when, and not just the users, but even the applications, because, in cloud, you have a lot of app to app communication. One service is talking to other service. Even those communications are logged, and you can find out that information even after a few weeks or a few months if needed.
And that is done automatically already, or do I need to make sure the team enable this logging?
In case of CloudTrail, what happens is that you have the management calls getting logged automatically, like all these, activities, log in, log out, those kind of activities. But you, of course, have the ability to go ahead and enable that further. So say, for example, you have some data lakes on S3, and you want to create a separate trail for all of your S3 buckets. You can do that. You can have, okay, all my S3 logs go there. Probably all my Lambda logs, let's capture them there. So those kind of things you can definitely do. You can have separate trails for those things, definitely.
Okay.
Let me ask you one question here on authentication. What are the mechanisms of authentication? Yeah. So let me put it again. I'll ask you, like, what are things you are using in your company? So let's go ahead and do that. So when we talk about authentication, we have these three, I would say, I don't know, categories or mechanisms. We call them what you know, what you have, And again, let's see from the audience if they get this response. Just put what you think, what we are talking about, and what you are. So what do you think, Nicole? What I'm talking about here, or can you guess?
Good. Does our audience know? Yeah, they're already starting. So obviously, what you know is usually your password or something like that, right? What you have is usually something like this, right? Or something smaller like a UB key or something like that, right? And we're using that as well in our company.
Right.
And then what you ask, obviously, who am I? I need to prove who I am. And that is usually done because I got away from, or I type in my email address. We do federation internally to just avoid, that someone loses their identity and their password and maybe also their phone at the same time. We just federate in.
Definitely. So yeah, let me just put that there. So we have what you know when you say, you rightly mentioned password or user ID. So we'll use this one word called credentials, right? So your email address, your password, your PIN, anything which you know, which you remember, it's there in your head. That's your credentials. That's what you know. Then you have what you have is, as you mentioned, that soft token or hard token. So we used to have these physical devices. I remember in one of my previous companies, we had this VPN token. So every time you click on the button, it will generate a number which has to match or sync on the server, and only then you get access, right? So let's put this as soft or hard tokens, right? So do you still use, by the way, Nicole, the hard tokens, the devices?
So we have a physical token as well. Exactly. Or so we have the choice. If people want to use an application on their phone that, to your point, generates some, number or code or whatever, they can do so. But we also have physical devices they need to use to authenticate.
All right. So in your company, you have given the options that they can use the physical tokens, the hard tokens, or they can download an application and use that as basically an authenticator app, right? So we have, I think, Google Authenticator, we have Dell Authenticator, we have a number of different vendors providing that, right? So we have now more and more companies coming up with that. Definitely. And yes, the last word we have is, of course, your fingerprints, your retina, your face, voice. This always reminds me, of James Bond movies. I don't know if Ashish would know this. Be a movie fanatic. In Jason Bourne, the first scene is that this guy is in the ocean, and the person who saves him, he finds a chip on the hip implanted, right? And using that, he goes to the Swiss bank and just puts his palm, and he has access to to an account which has got, I don't know, infinite amount of dollars there. So yeah, something on those lines. So we have the biometrics, of course, and this is where I think some folks, they put that on the chat window. When you use more than one mechanism, I think this is one of the best practices, and I'm hoping you're doing that already in your company as well. That you use, let's say, credentials, and along with that, tokens, or you use credentials and you use biometrics, some sort of face, finger, voice, or anything like that, retina, anything of that sort. When you use more than one mechanisms or more than one factors to authenticate, that is what we refer to as, I think you must have heard of this term, two-factor authentication, right? And two-factor, three-factor, the generic word for that is something called multi-factor authentication. So I guess now I'm assuming everybody is comfortable there, right? So multi-factor authentication, that's what it talks about. All right, so one more thing I want to talk about, probably we'll then move on, we'll switch gears, is IAM. Now, at this point, I'm assuming our audience is already familiar with IAM service, and we have the 4 components, right? So we have users, we have groups, we have policies, and then we have something called roles. Which one do you think, Nicole, what are you using, by the way? Are you using all 4 of them, or is it just 1 or 2 of them?
So we have roles. So primarily I prefer roles because they're temporary credentials, right? It makes me sleep better at night. I don't want anyone running around with user credentials, and it's also a management nightmare, right? So setting up all those users and the like. So we stick to roles as much as possible. There might be exceptions for some systems, right? We have policies. We have a central team that is creating those policies. They are being then approved by my team and obviously myself. And there's very restricted access to these policies. So we make sure that not everyone can go and, change the policy or create one that gives them permissions they shouldn't have. So we are really, really strict with this. But obviously, there's always a weak spot in a policy. If I have someone on my team that might make a mistake and we don't catch it, it's not great. But again, we might need mechanisms to vet those policies maybe even better than we do now.
Right, definitely. So we do have something called Access Analyzer. We have a couple of other tools, and of course we have this policy generation tool. So that is there. We have as well, which we will talk about in just a moment, which can be utilized. So if I come back. So yeah, if I talk about the security aspect, we started with the discussion on access management, and of course the service which we have is IAM. But as you can imagine, IAM is not the only service. I guess for you, if you're a large organization, and if you're somebody who has moved from on-prem to AWS, chances are that you have something of an existing implementation of Active Directory or LDAP or any one of those softwares which help you with access management, right? Identity and access management, as we call that. So we have this option within IAM. You can actually integrate those things as well. So if you're thinking that, okay, now do I have to move all my user base to IAM? The answer is no, you don't need to. You can have your existing directory services, your existing Active Directory implementation or LDAP implementation, and you can integrate them with IAM. That is something which can be done as well.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. So yeah, access management, just to let you know, we have a number of options. What's the next concern you have?
So we had, where were we? Yeah, on the access management, I know it doesn't refer really to this one, but obviously my developers, when we have applications for our customers, right, they need to authenticate in some shape or form. And I was wondering whether you offer something we could use for that as well, because obviously IAM is not, for externals. They should have some other form of authentication. And I'm not sure, does AWS have something for that as well, to authenticate users on our applications?
I mean, are you referring to like SAML, OAuth, those kind of things? Is that the one you're referring to?
No, I think it's more along the lines, what I really like is when I can use, my Apple ID or whatever to log into any shopping website, right? Because it's just one password. And we want to do the same for our customers, right? That they don't have to spend long time signing up and remembering yet another password, but they can just use, their Amazon login, Google, Facebook, you name it. Do you offer something like this, or because then we don't?
I think you're talking about this sign in using Google option. You have typically in the applications sign in using Facebook, sign in using probably Apple. You have these kind of things, right? And then of course you have
using an external identity provider to verify. Yeah.
Perfect. So yes, I mean, I'm glad to say we do have options there. So let's say you have a mobile application, you have a web application where, of course, you don't want to capture every single user, or you help them. Basically, it's all about user experience, right? You want to make it easy for the users that they don't have to create another profile. So, and typically anybody on planet Earth will have one of these four things, right? If not multiple things. So I have Amazon, I have Google. I'm not there on Facebook. I do have an Apple ID as well. So we do have these things, and anybody who is in this room will have 1, 2, 3, typically 3 or 4 of them. IDs will be there. So we don't want to, our end users to kind of go through this endless cycle of profile creation and everything. So that is where we have. Of course, that is there. We have the service. What we use. I mean, if I talk about the under the hood technology. And this is for the audience. If you're not familiar already, make sure you spend some time on SAML. We have something called OAuth, OAuth 2.0 to be more specific. and we have something called OIDC. These are the under the hood technologies. Using the SAML and OIDC and OAuth, we actually enable our users to use these, as we call them, third-party identity providers, right? So what these people are, if I have an application and I want to use any one of them, I am using them as a third-party identity providers. I'm not keeping their details in my own databases, in my own data centers, or my own account. I'm just using them. They have it with Google. I just check with Google that, okay, is the person genuine? Is Nicole the correct person, or is it somebody impersonating Nicole? So then once I have that confirmation, I give access to my application. Once I get a confirmation from Google, because I trust Google, because I trust Amazon, because I trust Apple and Facebook, right? Anyway, so that's the kind of a very, very layman-ish explanation. But coming back to your question, yes, we do have a service. In fact, what I want to do is I want to give you this list, and we'll share this with everybody there. But if you get this, we have this identity and access management, just to kind of give you an idea that the amount of services we have. So we are at the moment, we are talking about this identity access management. And if you look at this, we have spoken about the first one. We just had a sort of very quick user groups and policies. This is the one I was talking about, IAM Identity Center. This is the one you use if you have this on-prem Active Directory or LDAP and you want to integrate that to your existing AWS implementation. The service which you would need for your requirement is something called Amazon Cognito. This is the service which gives you the ability to do just that, what you just asked me. Like, you have third-party identity providers. You want to give them access using those. You don't want to create, and basically you don't want to have the headache of managing those users in your own organizations. At least not yet. I mean, this is very, very true or very useful for a startup organizations. They don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the resources to do that. So this really helps them. And once they scale, they will have their own databases, of course.
Yeah, sounds good. That sounds good. One problem solved. But which brings me to my next one. I have a whole list of problems. The other thing that I'm always very, very concerned about is obviously encryption, right? And I mean your own, leadership in tech, when they go on stage and talk about it, you should be encrypting everything. And I'm a big fan of encryption. So at the moment, we have different ways of encrypting things depending on the data. So sometimes we will use an HSM to create our own key material and these kind of things. Other times we will, just have a third party that creates keys for us, right? Obviously, at the moment, I have a whole team managing those keys and making sure that they're being rotated in line with the schedule, or if there is the need to rotate earlier for some reason, I need to rely on them that they do so. But it's all still very manual, and it's very expensive because these people do their job, but they could be doing something else, right? The question is, does AWS offer a service that actually helps with key management, where I can create keys, but do I also have the freedom to bring my own key material if required, and how is that managed? Is there something you can help with, or do I need to integrate what I have now into the whole cloud thing?
Well, the answer is the first answer to your last question. Can you do both? The answer is yes. You can do both. You can use a service from AWS. If needed, if let's say you have a third-party tool, or if you have something, a lot of companies, they create their own, their developers, they write an application to take care of those things. If you have those, you can definitely work with that. I mean, at any stage in AWS, you can use AWS services, or you can use third-party tools and softwares and services, and you can integrate them together. Because today, if I talk about 10, 15 years back versus now, integration between different tools is much, much easier, much more convenient, because everything is like API driven. You just need to understand that, and you can integrate that very easily. Now, coming back to your first question, do I have a service? Do we have in AWS something to offer you something similar? Yes, we do have. The answer is a big yes. And the service which I will talk about is actually KMS. In fact, we have two services. We have KMS and we have Cloud Edges, and the two major ones when it comes to encryption. Or to be more specific, I would say this could be mentioned as managing encryption keys. Now, what we do is a lot of times, people get confused. Like when we say encryption, we are talking about encryption keys because you need a key to encrypt your data. And this is essentially, we are referring to encryption of the data at rest, right? We have two aspects. When we talk about security, we have the data at rest, and then we have the data in transit, right? So you save the data. So think of your services. So I'm assuming you have multiple S3 buckets. I'm assuming you have a lot of EBS volumes. I'm assuming you have RDS, your databases, you have your DynamoDB tables, right? And multiple different services. So wherever you have your data, which is at rest, which is like, residing somewhere. Again, doesn't matter if it is your data centers or our data centers. If you're using one of our services, it is somewhere in one of the AWS data centers. The data is residing. That data you can encrypt. In some cases, you will encrypt. I mean, it's a choice, but in a lot of situations, it is compulsory that you will go ahead and encrypt that data. I mean, there is no choice to unencrypt the data. And a good example actually would be, if I show you S3, we had that option. If I maybe let me open the console is there. Let me go to the S3 bucket. Let's see if I have something. Okay, so we have some test buckets there. If I click on that, so this is the bucket again. This is empty just for show, just for demo purposes. There's nothing, no data inside this bucket at the moment. Of course, you will manage permissions. So access management, what we talked about earlier, S3 has its own access mechanism. So you have these in ACLs and bucket policies, etc. But what we are interested in, what I wanted to show you is this. If you go to properties, and if you scroll a little bit down, there we go. If you see here, default encryption, till about a year back, S3 had this. This was an optional thing. When you create a bucket, this was unencrypted by default. Then you come here and then you make it encrypted. Today, that is not the case. You cannot have an unencrypted bucket. The bucket will be encrypted by default. What kind of encryption you are looking for? Because again, encryption is a big topic. You have different types and different variants there. And again, that brings us to compliance as well, because any organization, depending on what industry and what geography you are in. So if you're a company in the UK, you will have different regulations. If you're a company in India, you will have different regulations, right? So based on that, you have certain guidelines, certain regulations to adhere to. That even falls under the encryption as well. So how you're encrypting, it is also driven by these regulatory bodies. You do that. And that is where you have these options. What you asked me is right here. When I click on that edit button, I'll show there we go. When I click on this edit button, I have these three options, right? So server-side encryption with Amazon S3. So this is the default mechanism where you don't get to see the keys. S3 does everything for you and your data is encrypted. The most basic form of encryption, if you will. Then you have this server-side encryption again, but this time you're using KMS. This is the service we are using, right? And then you have this dual layer server-side encryption, which is like an additional layer. You have that. And if you look at the bottom, if you see here, you have this option of choose from your own KMS keys and enter AWS KMS key ARN, right? So these are the options you have. And this is where, when you choose this first option, choose from your AWS KMS keys. This is when you go to KMS and you can actually import your own keys. So let's say you are, because of some regulations, or let's say you are very skeptic, you don't trust AWS. You say, no, I will use KMS or I will use S3, but I want to use my own keys. So this is where you will go in and do that for you. So you will import the key and then you will use that keys for different services, different data which you have for configuration.
But I would have, in that case, to manage key rotation, right? If I bring the key, that would not happen automatically.
I would say semi. You do have a number of options. If you see here, when you click on this create a KMS key, when you've done that once you have imported, you have sort of a lot of things you have automated within KMS there, right? So you can choose whether you want, again, encryption, you have symmetric keys, you have asymmetric keys. How do you want to encrypt? How do you want to decrypt? So if I go with the default options, I'll give it a table. And again, let's say demo BeSA key there, some description there. I'll keep it blank. Tagging, best practice, but I'm skipping at the moment. We always have this, this analogy, this we talk about in our FinOps classes a lot, that tagging is like exercising. We all know that we should do it.
But we don't.
So tagging is one of those things, yeah. And yeah, so you can choose here, you can define who is the person. Now here again, you have multiple things, probably we're kind of going too deep dive for a single session, but you have two kinds of permissions. One permission is the admin permission on the keys, and the second type of permission is the user permission on the key. So this is the admin permission. So let's say I'm the person who has created this key, right? So I have the permission to delete and rotate that. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then probably I will give you permission that you are a user. You want to utilize that key on a day-to-day basis. So you should have this option to call this key in your applications when you are decrypting any data anywhere. You should have the option to decrypt. So you can do this, and you can just go and click on next. Again, it gives you the policy, what it has implemented here. There we go. This is one of the IAM policies which is implemented here. Sorry, KMS policy. Click on finish, and then you have the key created. Right. So this is KMS. You can definitely manage. You have number of options there. Again, like if you have a requirement to, let's say, adhere to or comply with, say, for example, PCI DSS or SOC compliance or HIPAA or FISMA, and you have encryption as one of the requirements, which typically you have, this is the place to come. KMS will help you do that. Now, one of the problems, or I don't say problems, but limitation, KMS is a shared tenancy model where you get the service, but under the hood, it's somewhere on the AWS hardware, right? And that hardware is because cloud is a shared tenancy model. We all know that, right? So the hardware is being shared. A lot of companies, I mean, especially if I talk about the highly regulated industries like banking, oil and gas, insurance, those kind of companies, they sometimes, or I would say a lot of times with these companies, they have this requirement that they can't share the hardware as well, right? In one of these situations. And that is where we have the other service which comes into picture called Cloud HSM Key, right? So Cloud HSM, think of it as a box which you have rented. It is there in AWS data centers, but you have full control on Cloud HSM, right? You have AWS folks, they don't have access to Cloud HSM with the data and everything, okay? You do everything there. You have access to that. And this is typically used for whenever you have those, as I said, extra. And we have something called, there is in financial industry, we have FIPS to 140. So if you have this FIPS 142, up to that, you have KMS supported. It takes care of that. But when you have FIPS 143 level 3 encryption requirement, which is like more stringent type of encryption, that's when we are looking at Cloud HSM there.
Okay, perfect. That is good to know. So I will have a tool for every situation that will come up.
You will.
Which brings me to back to my initial thing, right? When my team says, everything is safe, we have firewalls and the like, and we haven't spoken about firewalls. And I understand that there are different types of firewalls for your servers, for your databases, for your overall environment, and then obviously the classical thing, one of them that was mentioned is called WAF. So it would be good for me to understand the differences between those things when they are being used. I would also like to see how granular they are, right? Because I don't know, I haven't seen them in action. And then the last thing that I'm also a bit concerned about, because I don't like overhead, right? Because everyone comes to me and says, security, the department of no, security, the ones that have lots of people that just do work that actually don't produce anything apart from keeping us safe. So is there also a way to manage all these different firewall services in an easy manner, right? Because again, that's important for me that I can centralize this whole management as much as possible to keep the pool of people working with that close to me.
That is true. That is true. So yes, I mean, to answer the first question, do you have firewalls? Yes, definitely we do, and we have multiple types, multiple layers of firewalls. If I come back to this main page, somewhere I should be able to find that. There we go. So we have this, if you see here, Firewall Manager. Coming to your question, when you ask, like, do you have a place where you can manage everything sort of from a single pane of glass view? That is what Firewall gives you. Because we have different kinds of firewalls, as you can imagine. You can see some of them on screen. So we have, I don't see those security groups and those, yes, a secrets manager. But if you see here, network firewall, Shield is there, WAF is there. We have now DNS level firewalls, and of course we have our old and trusted security groups and network ACLs are there, right? So all of these services, they are scattered. They are different places at different places, right? So when you, and especially in today's world, when we have this multi-account structure, you can have hundreds of different accounts, right? So in those situations, Firewall Manager and Security Hub, these are the two services which gives you sort of a single pane of glass view, where from one place you can see everything and you can see what kind of security posture your organization has or your application has. And I mean, at your level, Nicole, I would say it would be very useful, because at a CISO level, you don't want to go into individual applications or individual, servers, right? You want to see overall my application or my environment, is it healthy or not? Overall, my infrastructure is healthy or not? So you need to have that big picture view, and then you can allocate, or I should say delegate the ground level tasks to different engineers and people who are working and managing those, right? So Firewall Manager and Security Hub, they do that for you, definitely. Of course, we do have these services. If I show you quickly, if I come back to my VPC, let me find that. And the two services which we have, of course, security groups and so NACLs. So the main difference, again, this is important from the exam perspective, so I just wanted to cover this briefly. When you work with network ACLs, security group, again, it's pretty straightforward. You put the names of the group. If I show any one of the groups there. So if you see here, one of the security groups I have opened, and you have this, if you see, I have inbound rules. So in this case, I have, if you see here, I have open port 80, port 443, and port 22. And you will see this twice because it's for IPv6 and IPv4 for both of them. And then I will have some outbound rules. Typically, by default, again, remember, in security groups, all the outbound rules are allowed by default, right? So in this case, you see here, it's all traffic, all protocols, or all port range, and the destinations is all 0000, basically denotes the internet, right? So anything going out, it's allowed by default. Of course, you can change that if you want. It's up to you. But by default, when you create a security group, this is how you get it. In case of not the security groups, but do we have the NACLs? Yeah, network ACLs. It's there are a couple of extra things. I just want to highlight those to you. When I go to any one of them, if you see here, I have this inbound rule, and here we have this concept of priority. So if you look at this, you have this rule number, and then you have there are two things which I want to highlight, which is not there in security groups. One is this inbound rule, where you have this rule numbers priority set, and then you have this allow or deny, right? Let me show an example here. Let me take an example. So think of it this way. Let's say I'll edit this inbound rule, and let's say I want to add a new rule. I will go ahead and put some number, and I'll show you the reason there as well. And let's say custom TCP. Let's say what I want to do. Think of a situation. I'm assuming you have been using Systems Manager lately in your environment.
Yes.
Right.
We started to use it because I also thought, oh, it's a great tool that helps a little bit to ease the burden on my teams. So we have started. We're not using everything just yet.
Okay. What about Session Manager within Systems Manager? You have a unit called Session Manager. Are you using that?
Yes, we are using that.
Okay, perfect then. So just for everybody's benefit, Session Manager is a utility within Systems Manager. Once you have that, when you enable that, once you configure everything, you don't need to keep port 22 open. And you don't need to keep port, what is that, 3389, right? For RDP, you don't need to keep that port open as well. And you can still communicate. You can still have terminal-like access there. So think of it this way. Now, because Nicole, you have configured everything, and you're the CISO, so you would know this better than me. We should not keep it open, right? So if we don't need it, block. Whatever you don't need, you keep it blocked. So let's say this is 22. I will go ahead and deny for everybody. Okay.
Oh,
Click
that's
on
amazing.
Save
So
changes.
they're forced to use Session Manager, even if they
They
kind
will
of
be forced to.
avoided it for
Exactly.
up to now. That's
Absolutely.
ideal for me.
Absolutely.
I like that. Yeah.
Right. So now I have denied, and as you can see here, the second rule is there, which is SSH. Do you think it has been implemented? Do you think now we are safe? Nobody's able to use SSH?
So if you have saved, oh yeah, so it says it's successfully updated. So I would say, or I hope, yes, that everything has been changed, and from now on,
Right.
anyone who's not SSH'd in at the moment should no longer be able to do so. Or does it also stop people who are already using SSH now?
Everybody, it's the moment you save it, it takes place immediately. But there is a small caveat. What I have done actually, just to show everybody, is that the number, this is where the rules precedence come into picture. At the moment, even though I have created this rule, if I show it over here, I have created this rule and it is denying, but the problem is the rule precedence is low. So nothing is coming to second one. What I need to do is I have to make sure that this 110 is kind of, this rule is coming at the top. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Go ahead and click on edit inbound, and probably I will make it anything less than 100. Okay. So I'll give it 90 just for the, so it looks good. It's like tens of tables. My son, he's in year 1 at the moment, and he loves the table of 10 and 1. Those are his favorite times table, All right, so we have this now. And now, as you can see, we have rule number 90 at the top. So now in our organization, nobody will be able to SSH into instances using port 22. They have to go to Session Manager, go through Session Manager, right? I mean, this is to show you how granular we can go. In fact, we can go further, one step. Let's say, for example, as a fail-safe or as some mechanism, you as a CISO, you want to have access to the port 22 just in case, just in case if you need. So what you would want to do, you want to have everybody blocked, but you want it for yourself from your laptop. Okay, let's take a scenario. So I can keep it as is. I can go ahead and click on edit inbound, and then I can go ahead and add a new rule. This time I'll make sure it is less than 90. So let's make it 80. Once again, I will choose SSH 22. And this time again, if you see very carefully, I want to make sure this is not for everybody. This is not a good example. This is not a best practice, not just in AWS, but pretty much anywhere. You should not open ports for the whole world. That's always a bad idea, right? So what I will do, I will go ahead and make it. Imagine your IP address is 1.2.3.4. Again, whatever your actual IP would be, I will put it over here. And then, of course, I'll make it 32 just to make sure that it's a single IP address. And I will allow this for you. And if I click on Save Changes, so now if you see, it's much more granular. What is happening? If you come and you want to SSH into the instances, you will be able to do that because of rule number 1, or to be more specific, rule number 80. But if I come here, let's say I try to take SSH, I see Nicole can do it. Why can't I? So let's try and do something mischievous. Yeah. But when I go ahead, rule number 80 would not match because my IP address is different. It will come to rule number 90. And this is where it will deny for me. So you can have this selective deny in NACLs or network ACLs, which is not available in security groups. So if you want to be very, very granular, so this is something which you can do.
That is very good. That's very good.
Right. So let me remove this because I'm going to stop. I'm going to block myself out. So let me just remove this.
Okay, that's very good. So now we have to have these two managed. So, and you spoke earlier about the firewall manager. So I assume that these two cannot be managed by the firewall manager, but this WAF thing can be managed.
You
by
do have WAF, yes, yes. I mean, if I talk about, so we just talked about these two, right? Network ACLs and security groups, but we do have a number of other tools which we can utilize. And if I go to this, not VPC, let's go to WAF just to quickly take a look if I can find it for you. So we have WAF, we have Shield, and then we have Firewall Manager. So WAF is your web application firewall, which basically gives you that intrusion detection systems, IDS. And again, I'll just put that if folks are not familiar, just make sure you take a look. So IDS and IPS systems, right? So intrusion detection systems and intrusion prevention systems. So WAF is, I would say, technically it is an IPS, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, because it has this rule mechanism. It's very much like how, IP tables work in very similar fashion. I always relate to that. What it does is like, you have rules, and based on the rules, what we saw in security group as well, that if it matches the rule, it will allow. If it doesn't, it will block. So WAF gives you that ability to go ahead and, let's say you have malicious IPs, known malicious IPs, you want to block those to coming to your organization or to enter your network. Those kind of things you can do, right? So you save yourself against, again, man-in-the-middle attack or SQL injection type. You can have those rules along those lines to understand, okay, any of these which looks malicious, stop it. Which looks suspicious, stop it. You can do those things. Those filterings are available.
That sounds good. So, but the thing is, yes, man in the middle attacks, and that obviously I don't like that. I'm a CISO, right? That's one of my things that I don't like. But my bigger problems, and maybe I'm just reading this whole Shield description there. So imagine we have a DDoS attack. WAF won't, it won't do that much, or it might take very long, right? Because you need to figure things out. So Shield, would Shield be something that helps my team to mitigate DDoS attacks should someone be bored and hijack someone's fridge to attack my infrastructure?
Yes. So we have WAF we talked about. Shield, let me give you a quick overview of Shield.
Yeah.
Shield is a service which gives you attack or helps you against DDoS, as you rightly mentioned. We have that word, right? So if you look at this, it says over here that each AWS Shield provides expanded DDoS attack protection. For your AWS resources, you get 24/7 support. Now, let me kind of break it down a little bit for you, because this would be useful information for you. Shield has got two components. It has got something called Shield Standard, okay, which is, of course, which is available to all the customers. Let's put this as enabled by default for all the customers. So let's say if right now you have created an EC2 instance and you have a few, let's say, workloads, it's helping you. Shield is helping you by default.
So I don't need to tell my team, go and enable it. It's already there for everything.
No, it's there already. Yes, it's enabled by default. It's completely free. You're not paying for this at all. And it's there for irrespective of a customer having one single instance and a customer having, let's say, I don't know, millions of instances. It is there for you. But there's, again, we need to go to this. Let me show you one more thing here, by the way. Give me one sec. So if I go to this is, by the way, very useful for you. We have this DDoS white paper on AWS. Let me open that. I searched with the wrong keyword there. If I look for white paper, I think that should take me to the paper there. I think, yeah. Right. So this is the white paper. Again, we'll put the links. And if you see here, this is very useful, by the way, for in general. I think you would be an expert. You would know this already. But a lot of us, we don't know about what exactly is a DOS attack, right? How does it take place? So we have DOS, and then we have something called DDoS. In recent time, I'm hearing a lot about something called DRDoS, Distributed Reflection Denial of Service Attack, which is kind of more sophisticated form of it, right? So it helps you understand what is DOS attack, what is DDoS, and everything else. And then it talks about the different layers. And if you see here, a very interesting thing for everyone to understand. Attacks, they take place at different layers of OSI. Okay, you have this layer 3 and 4. You have this SYN flood and UDP reflection attacks. Then you have layer 6 and 7, what we call them as, if I kind of highlight them. So this is our application layer attacks, and layer 3 and 4 is our infrastructure layer attacks. Okay, so I'll leave this white paper with you and with the audience, so you can go ahead and read, because it's quite a big amount of discussion and big amount of information there. Just to show you one more thing, as a best practice, again, this will be very useful for you when you want to understand what are the best practices available on AWS. And this is where you have this nice diagram. And if you look at this, it tells you why WAF is a good practice or a best practice, why API gateway and how API gateway sort of mitigates and minimizes the chances of attack, how ELB helps, how CloudFront helps you, and so on and so forth. So if you look at this, you have all these BP 1, 2, 3, 4. So BP stands for best practice. And if you scroll down, you have all the details mentioned in the same white paper.
Nice.
Okay.
Just one question. You showed just the table, right? And you said that Shield is layer 3 and 4, I think it was. So obviously, I don't want any attacks on layer 7 either, right? That's where the data sits. That's where really the really critical things are. So what if I want protection for layer 7? Is that where I have, again, my team that needs to build on top of Shield, or do you have a product that actually takes care of that? I don't care if I have to pay for it, I have budget, but I just need to know because I don't want any gaps in my security.
No, that is very important. That's very true as well. So this, again, we do have. You would have expected that we do have that option, and that is where we have this thing called standard. Is where you have this free, and this is for layer 3 and 4, right? So helps you with layer 3 and 4. And the second option, as you said, you are very worried, and you're constantly kind of a target of the malicious players, and you want to make sure that you are always protected at all layers, not just 3 and 4. And a lot of companies, they take care of layer 6 and 7 themselves, right? So they say, okay, we can manage that. But a lot of companies, they don't want. You say, as you said, like, you want to make sure that you get the best possible support, and you don't mind paying for that as well. So that's where we have the second option called Shield Advanced, which again helps you with the DDoS, of course. But this is a couple of things. If I tell you, first thing is layer 6 and 7 as well. So 3, 4 is anyways covered. 6 and 7 is covered as well. It has to be enabled, or I should say, it has to be subscribed, right? So you have to, because of course it's a paid service. There's a cost associated. So it's a paid service where you pay a monthly, or I should say, there's a monthly subscription. Right, so you have a monthly subscription involved. So what you do is you go ahead and enable this. You go to the Shield console and you subscribe for that service. There's a monthly fee. If I'm not wrong, it's like maybe a few thousand, like $2,000 or $3,000 per month. That's a fee, and then you are saved against all of them. One of the very unique things which you get in Shield Advanced is something called SRT, or the Shield Response Team, we call that. Do you have any of the pen testing experts in your company, in your team, who are helping you with penetration testing and checking where are the vulnerabilities? We call them red teams, blue teams, purple teams. Those are the things. Imagine your red team or your blue team, the pen testing team, basically, which is helping with this, having direct access to the pen testing experts in AWS. And having sort of a direct line. Imagine, like, you have a direct line with the president of the United States, and anything you want, can you just go ahead and call? Oh, can you do this, please? Right. So those kind of things are available. When you say SRT, you have this 24/7 access to this team as a result of that that subscription which you do. Access to SRT, and this stands for Shield Response Team. As I said, this is our pen testing experts, our security experts who give you, you talk to. So let's say, imagine a situation where you are going through a DDoS attack. Something is happening at this point in time. And imagine that your engineers, they simply call AWS, 2 of your engineers and 2 or 3 of AWS engineers, they together work together on that problem and mitigate that risk. How would that be?
That would be amazing, because it obviously takes our team way longer to get up to speed, right? We hope we are not having a DDoS attack every day, so they're really well trained. So
Very important point. Yes, because in our case, this SRT team is handling. We have literally millions of customers, right? So, so we are doing this on a daily basis, and they are like, I would say, like, their job role is to mitigate DDoS. So they have this expertise which you can leverage when you work with Shield Advanced.
Yeah. So that sounds really good. Just one question, and I have to ask that because my finance colleague will ask me that. Let's say the worst is to happen, and yes, we mitigate, but there is some financial impact despite our best efforts. Is there also something in place that would kind of mitigate the financial impact if there was one? I just need to know so I can potentially.
I mean, I didn't get the question completely. Do you mean that in some or the other way, AWS compensates you? I mean,
yes. So if there was a DDoS attack and there might be, some impact on our bill because of that, is there some mechanism that is linked to us using Shield Advanced to kind of compensate for some of the damage, or is there something we would have to pick up with our account manager?
I'll check with that. I'll probably have to get back to the account manager on that, or check internally. But I'll give you a generic answer, not specific to Shield. I have had this situation the past few years back. Generally, the policy of AWS is very simple. And again, this is where the shared responsibility model comes into picture, right? So it's always a joint responsibility. If you do your part right, and if we do our part right, typically we would be good, we would be safe. But let's say, again, it's all eventualities, right? So something or the other, we always go misconfigure things. We always do this and that. The general rule or general rule of thumb from AWS, you can keep it like, if let's say the problem was, let's say there was investigation done, it was found that the problem was at the AWS end. In that scenario, AWS pays you back for they compensate for the resources which you have used.
Yeah.
Okay, so for, let's say you had used multiple, there was a crash on EC2 instance, it was compromised and those kind of things. But it doesn't compensate for the business loss. I mean, see, you can come back to us and you can say, oh no, we had a loss of $1 million per minute. And the application was down for 10 minutes. Then can you multiply that and give me my money back? That's not how it would work. In case of Shield specifically, because we are charging you and we are kind of telling you, and we are telling you we have our engineers working, it could be a little bit different. I have to check on that and get back to you.
Okay, that's fine.
I have no idea, but definitely in the next meeting we can discuss on that.
That sounds good. Thank you so much. Good. Yeah, so I think we're close to the end of our meeting, but is there any other services in the security area where you say, hey, Nicole, you should definitely have a quick look at those if you're not using them already to improve your security posture?
We do have a lot, Nicole. Actually, I mean, I would say we need another maybe 1 or 2 hours to go through everything. If needed, probably we'll do some other time. I'll take an appointment from you next time as well. But just to kind of give you a sort of again a big picture view, if you come back to this page, this main page of security, identity, and compliance on AWS, you do have a number of services. Just to give you some examples, I'm sure you have worked with the. Let me change the color there. The CVEs, right? So common vulnerabilities and exposures. We always have these problems. We do the bug fixes, patching. Inspector is a service which helps you with that. You want to configure compliance and want to work with, for example, again, think of it this way. Let me give you an example. You have 10,000 instances and you have maybe 15,000 EBS volumes, and you want to make sure that everything is encrypted. But you're not sure. You want some sort of mechanism to find out that are all of my instances and are all of my volumes encrypted. You want to check that out. That is where config can help you. What config can do, we generally call this as compliance as code. The idea is very simple. You create that scan, you create that rule, we call that config rule and config conformance pack. Okay, can you check that all of my EBS volumes are encrypted? And then you go ahead and do the scan. It will go ahead, it will do that for, let's say, 10,000 instances. It will come back with results. All right, 9,850 instances are looking good. But these 100 instances have been found to be non-encrypted. And then you can automate. So that's the process when you find the problem. The next step would be to remediate that, right? So there also you have a manual option. You can go ahead and do that, but of course that's not recommended, not for 100 instances anyways. So you will use like Lambda functions, and the best ways you can use in this particular situation, you can use something called Systems Manager, which helps with the automation of your standard config management type tasks there, right? So that is there. Then you have this, again, Firewall Manager we talked about. We talked about the security group and network ACLs and web application firewall. We have another firewall called network firewall. This is like the more advanced layer of firewalls where you have, again, if you're familiar with Suricata rules, those are the things you can configure over here, just like Suricata, like that. Okay.
And I can manage this one also via the Firewall Manager.
It can be, yes, yes. So Firewall Manager is like a the one place where you can see all of the things, what is happening, and you can go to the individual consoles and do things, right? Another very important service, I would say one more, is this called Amazon BeSA. This is again a very common problem we have when we work with very large organizations, right? Is that you have millions of amount of data in S3, right? And you're not sure. A very common problem, especially for example, if you're in healthcare industry, you have personally identifiable information, and you have certain rules how you want to show those those data. You want to keep it separate. So BeSA is one such tool which helps you with, if you have any sensitive data you have by mistake exposed on S3, you have any, I don't know, encryption keys, you might have some access keys, I don't know, I mean, you might have had situations, we had this in the past, that you are a developer, you have written your code, you have an access key ID and the secret access key, you do a git push and your code goes to GitHub. Right? So those kind of situations, if you want to avoid, you will use Amazon BeSA. You run it like every now and then, once a month or once in 15 days, and you just go ahead and if there's any problem, you find that, and then you mitigate that. So long story short, we have a number of services. We have not covered probably not even 10%. So I guess we need another session or another few sessions to do that. So take a look at this, and just this one, probably this would be for everybody. It would be a very good place to get started. So we have this something called AWS Security White Paper, which basically is like overview of security services on AWS. This one seems to be archived. Let's see if I can find something more up to date. I believe this should be the one. So not this again. I'll probably find that. Maybe we'll find that, and we'll do this, post this separately. So there's a white paper. It's about 50-60 pages. Gives you a nice overview of what are the different services, what you should do, this situation, use the service, and a very good starting point.
Thank you. That sounds very good. But as you can see, my next meeting has already arrived. So we unfortunately have to finish. Thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah, and definitely we'll meet again and we'll discuss further. We'll take it to the next discussions. Thank you. And Ashish, over to you.
That's the challenge, Sharik and Nicole. When we talk about security, there are so many things to discuss and follow along. And all these component, good part is they integrate with each other. Like you could take CloudTrail into CloudWatch, and then you can have config who could monitor your CloudTrail, and lots of integration happens. So hopefully people would have got better idea on it. And few things probably you are noticing that in behavioral sessions also, like how we are responding to customer. It's not always that we know everything as a technical expert. It is expected that you would find some question which you have no clue at all. Rather than bluffing, it is always good to say, hey, I do not know, but I'll go back, learn for it, or at least search for the documentation and then come back. So don't bluff to the customer. You would lose trust, and if the trust is lost, then you are not playing a good role as a consultant. So please be mindful of those particular things.
Yeah. Right. I think Ashish, you're referring to that place where I was talking about that Nicole asked.
Exactly.
And just to let everybody know, I genuinely don't know that.
Exactly.
It was not a stage thing. I genuinely don't know. So, and of course, in those situations, it's always preferable to accept and say, we will come back. We'll talk about next topic, rather than guessing or giving something, which you're not sure about. That's always a bad idea.
I always say, Sharik, when I start with customer conversation, that, hey, You are welcome to ask every question, but it comes with a disclaimer that I am not Google and I may not know everything.
Good way. You're not Google.
Good, thank you. And hopefully people have learned to keep your questions coming. Purna is doing wonderful job. She is handling all the traffic single-handedly. Thanks, Purna, for that. And now it is time for some analogies. While I was having your discussion, Sharik and Nicole, about DDoS attack, I'm not sure if any of you have seen this movie, which is called Thomas Crown Affair. I'll talk a little bit on that. And that gives me idea that, okay, this is something, a real life DDoS attack type of thing happening. So thank you, Sariq and Nicole. I'll remove you so that you can take some water and then have a sigh of breathe. And then we will be adding you back at the end. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. So hopefully everyone is enjoying, and keep your suggestions coming. That would help us in getting the most out of the session, and we would be able to then cater to the technical need or behavioral needs you have. Now we were talking about DDoS attack. Concept of DDoS is very simple, that you send so many requests to a service that service become overwhelmed. It could be CPU exhausting, it could be network connection exhausted, it could be any open port exhausted. So that's what a DDoS attack is. And I'm a movie fan, so I would try to relate the thing based on what I have seen. Any one of you have ever seen a movie called Thomas Crown Affair? You don't have to watch the whole movie, but if you watch, it's a nice, interesting one. A haste movie where somebody is stealing a famous painting from a museum, a really interesting way. So check that, and in that there is a YouTube link. I'll put it into the chat, where they talk about that, how he has actually successfully able to get that painting out, and how he used multiple methods of DDoS attack in a way in which he tried to create diversion, and through that diversion he was able to get the particular painting out. So this is the movie where he is intentionally paying with multiple characters, and that's where challenges happen with the security team. So interesting one. Check that. That is about DDoS attack. It will give you some idea on that. So check that. Okay. Talking about little bit more analogies here. First one is authentication and authorization, and the third one is accounting. So you could relate these things in a real life also. First information I would give you is about going to an ATM. When you go to an ATM, you insert your debit or credit card and you enter a number. That is where you are verifying who you are. Only you would remember the PIN number, hopefully, unless you are like me who write PIN number on the card. You would probably be only one who remembers it. So authentication is who you are, and when based on that you may be authorized to perform some operation. Like from ATM I can withdraw money, but there may be a limit imposed on my bank, that my bank account, that I can withdraw X number of amount of money only. I cannot go ahead and empty the whole ATM, or in a one transaction I could withdraw X amount of money only, or I could deposit up to X amount of money. So that is what authorization is. What can you do once you get authenticated? So you need to get authenticated first. If you are a valid person, then you will be authorized to perform some operation, and then there is always cameras. So that is your accountability, that who actually did all these things, who came in at that time, what operation they performed, everything is being recorded. So that is how your AAA works in ATM: authentication, authorization, and accountability. Same thing, take this example to your airports, where you are trying to go into a different place, and for that you need a passport to different country. So passport basically is authentication, which says who you are, your name, your photo, your date of birth. So it is your identity which we are verifying through the passport, and then you would have a visa for a specific place, and that visa is verifying your authorization. You may have a tourist visa for a place, you may have a work visa, you may have a transit visa just to pass from that country. So that's all becomes your authorization. And obviously airports are highly surveillanced, so there are cameras running. That is where accounting is happening. So this is how authentication and authorization would actually work into real life. All right, hope everyone is following along. Talking more on the concept of federation, we talked about identity federation here, and the concept applies in real life too. So let's go ahead and see what a real life federation would look like. Probably you have heard about European Union countries, EU. There are 27 plus countries into European Union, and they have created some agreement between them, trade agreement, people agreement, so people can work from one country to another country. They can go from one place to another place without requiring any visa. So same thing happening here. The Schengen area where people are around, are able to move around, means that, hey, country 1 issued you the passport, but as country 2 and country 1 both are into the Schengen area, they trust the passport issued by another country, means your authentication happened somewhere else, and then you are authorized to perform some operation. In IAM, you may have your Active Directory. It is where your authentication happen. In authentication, you verified who you are, which user you are, and based on that, as IAM has a federation created or identity created with Active Directory, we will allow you to perform some authorization. We would allow you to perform some task on that. So this is a good example of how your authentication and authorization may work in case of federation. So you are trusting someone, and that's why you are accepting the token generated by them. In Schengen area, it is the passport. Country 1 issued the passport, but as country 1 and country 2, they both trust each other, they would allow this passport to be used in 2 different areas. So that's what a federation may look like. That is a good example you could think of federation as a service. All right, good. Let's talk about KMS also, little bit on that. So KMS is a service behind the scene. It uses some physical hardware, right? So let's see what happens here. Let's see what options are available in KMS. So when we talk about KMS as a service, behind the scene it uses a physical hardware device which is called HSM, Hardware Security Module. Hardware Security Module is basically a physical device like this. Obviously different shapes and sizes can be there. It could be something like this, it could be something like this, and these are the hardware devices which are used to store your keys or encryption keys or the metadata of the key also. So these are the physical hardware devices on which your keys are stored. They are not a huge size storage available. These are basically some small amount of storage in these devices, but tamper proof, highly secure and highly reliable, on which your keys will be stored. So these are called your HSM, Hardware Security Module. These are the physical devices. Obviously in AWS data center also there are a bunch of these devices on which your which your keys are stored. So physical devices are called HSM, and when you are using cloud HSM, what is the difference? Let me explain that. So the front end for any encryption operation is KMS. Now KMS can store your keys into a physical device which is a shared device, or what we call multi-tenant. So on that cluster, multiple customers' keys are stored, like taking a shared flight in which you are not only the person, you are sharing that flight. Similarly here you have multiple multiple customers who are storing their key on these hardware devices. Because it is multi-tenant, the cost is cheaper. These are called shared HSM devices. But in case there is a compliance requirement, and why these compliance requirement exist, see, this payment card industry, or PCI as we call it, these standard existed way before when the cloud came or before the multi-tenant architecture came. So they are still following the old school method and say, hey, we need physical separation. Unless there is a physical separation, we won't approve that particular hardware to be used in our compliance requirement. So fine. So in those kind of cases where you have strict compute requirement or strict compliance requirement to ensure you are not using a multi-tenant hardware, that time we provide you a dedicated HSM device. Consider a physical hardware security module provisioned for you. Nobody else can use it, and that becomes your own HSM device, which is a single tenant. Only one single customer's key would be there. Obviously one single customer can have multiple keys, but that is only one single tenancy here. All these keys are coming from customer A. Nothing is there which is beyond it. So this is how cloud HSM works, and if it is one single hardware device given to you, probably it may fail in some time or there may be some issues. So we always recommend that you provide or create a cluster of that, and through that we ensure that there are multiple devices present, and they would ensure that all of the data is preserved and there is availability is higher. So physical devices are same, only the ownership changes. In one situation it is a shared ownership, and another it is a dedicated device given to a single tenant. So that is what Cloud HSM is all about. All right, good. Let's talk about some more things here so that you can understand basic information. Whenever we talk about encryption, there is a method, we call them key, which is key is used to encrypt the data. What I'm showing you here on this slide is a very old encryption device. This was used by Greek generals when they were sending messages to their military. They would use this device which is called Cytel, and then the leather strip at the top is the encrypted message itself, and then this one is the key. So if I have the same size of wooden peg, I would be able to read the message, otherwise I won't be able to read that message. So that is how it will actually work. So hopefully this is clear that you are able to use encrypted message and a key. So if I am just having the encrypted message but I do not have key, I cannot decrypt it. It may not be the most sophisticated way of encrypting, but in old time it was still a better way. Obviously now we have better mechanism for encryption. So let me give an example of how it works. Again, it is an analogy. It is not exactly how it works. What I am explaining you is obfuscation, but similar concept is used into your encryption mechanism too. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Let's consider we all use our bank cards. Now, bank cards would require a PIN. Obviously you have to remember PIN, and challenges can come when you have multiple cards and multiple PIN numbers to remember. I am not a maths person, means remembering number is always difficult for me. So that's why I want to find out a way to store this information. The best, easiest method would be I go to this card and write down my PIN number on this. This would be the most convenient place to write down my PIN number, most convenient, right? But it is not the safest option available. So that's why we need a better mechanism. So if I just write this PIN directly and the card 4582, and if my card is lost and somebody finds it, they would be able to use it. That's a very challenging thing. We don't want that. So we can go ahead and perform some kind of obfuscation, or in a way in an encryption. So I created a key called +1 and a -1. I take the plain text number, which is my actual key 4582, and then I say, okay, let me add +1 in first digit, -1 in the second digit, +1 in third digit, -1 in fourth digit. So what I did, I took the actual plain text information and converted it into a number which is not exactly the same. So what I got now, I got 5491. This is the number, and this 5491 I can safely store on my card, write it down. Even if somebody finds this number, they won't be able to do anything with that because it is not direct number, it is a obfuscation I have done. So what I did, I have used here the key which helped me to convert my plain text into a encrypted format. So that's how I have converted it. So what I got here, 5491, is basically a cipher text as we call it. So we got a cipher text here in which we have stored our data. Right. So this is what I do. Obviously I will not use the same number +1 -1 for everyone. What I could do, I could go ahead and use different key, but maybe I can use same algorithm. Let me explain what I mean by that. So what I need now, if I have to decrypt this data 5491, I would take the 5491 number and reverse the key. This is a simple math formula, so it is not complicated. In real life, these mathematical formulas are very complicated. So I would get 4582 again back, and I can use my card here, no issues at all on that. So here if you see, two things are happening. I have the key which is called +1 and -1. In that, plus and minus is the algorithm. So if you know about algorithm, let's say you are using AES 256 as algorithm, or using SHA or SHA-2 as algorithm, these are the algorithm by which we are encrypting data. And in that, we would also be providing the actual value of the key material, which is 1. So maybe what I did in this particular case, I identified what is the first letter of my card and I used that with the algorithm. So this card is +1 and -1. I may have another card which is starting with, let's say, 2587. In that case, I would say I would use this key material. My algorithm is still plus and minus, but the value I am providing is 2 and -2. So obviously the new number which will come up would be much different than what I initially had. So this is how I could create a mechanism where everything is differently encrypted, though I am using the same algorithm, but as I have changed the value, my outcome will always be different. And this is same method which is used by your encryption algorithms too, not very different, but not this simple, little more complex, but hopefully you get the idea. So your algorithm and value, these are the two things you need to perform encryption for your application. So I hope this thing is clear and you got a better idea on that. Now I would share all these slides with you, and I had additional slides also created, but I think it is not needed as of now because we are obviously into time crunch. So I'll talk a little bit more on the logistics information about these particular session, so you are better prepared and you have more ideas on what we have. So I have encryption related information. I would skip them. I will send you some link where you can find more information about these encryption related information, but let me talk about some of the logistics information also, so that you are aware about what all you could do and what options are available for you to learn more. Talking further, we have talked about Cloud Career Journey Starter Kit. So we have started hosting the mentoring session. First mentoring session is going to be on 1st of June. There was some unplanned travel came up, that's why we could not do it on a previous date which we agreed on, but on 1st of June we would be performing this. This mentoring session would be focusing on all the path you could create for your cloud learning, some questions we got from the form, so we will be talking about that and we'll be seeing more information there. So that's what we could do. Some of you may have already seen this training, which is data analytics. If you are interested in that, go ahead for it. And I'm trying to publish this training on a different platform too, where I can put everything, because in Udemy there is a limit of 2 hours only for free training. So probably I would be able to host it in a different platform. And now I come to the weekly prizes which we have. So thanks to Cloud Career Journey and Whizlabs, so they are sponsoring the giveaway prizes. One book will be given every week and 10 of the Whizlab licenses for Cloud Sandbox will be given. So if you are trying to practice on AWS, you could use these sandboxes to get the hands-on experience if you need to. So we have weekly selection, which is purely based on engagement, people who are very active in chat, and then afterwards sharing their learning on social media, tagging us, maybe putting YouTube comment, maybe responding to YouTube comments, or sharing in their social media network. We would be happy to help you with this Cloud Career Journey book and your Whizlab Sound access. So please go ahead and do that and tag us so that we know that you are spreading the word, and let others also know about it. So we will be talking about that thing. Nice, good. And I will give you the link here in the chat so that you can register. This link we forgot last time. So give me a minute, I'll bring that link, and then you could be able to use this link to register yourself. I'll share that link in a minute, and this link is just for registration. We'll pick people mostly from the activeness of them into the session, but some we would be also picking up from the randomly selection. So this link will be there with you in a minute. Let me get that link for you, and then hopefully it should be easy for you all. I'll put that link into chat. These are our last week's winner. So if you haven't reached out to us, please reach out again so that we can facilitate your access, and hopefully you are making the most out of these sessions and getting the most time outcome, or you're getting the best return on the time you're investing with us. And keep coming with your ideas, keep asking questions that would help us in understanding what your technical needs are, and we would be then happy to answer those specific questions. Shouldn't be an issue at all. All right, any last minute question before we wrap up for today? We want to be mindful of everyone's time, including our presenters, so we should be able to answer these. How can we get your book with Analogies? Christian, you have a question there. So that book is available on Amazon. If you search for my name, you should be able to search it, or let me bring up another website, which is analogiescloud.com. So in case you are interested in knowing more about Analogies or learning through Analogies about cloud, please go ahead, check my website, analogiescloud.com. And this is the book which I authored with few other technical trainer, which is about cloud computing concept and tech analogy. This is available on Amazon. You should be able to get these things, should not be an issue. All right. Movie link, I'll put that into the chat, sorry, into the email addresses. So we would be using that. I would be sharing that, shouldn't be an issue. Which is available on YouTube. Yes, it is. And that's all, I guess. Any question I missed? If I have, let me know and I would be happy to answer those. Otherwise, let me add everyone again back on the stage. And thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Sharik. Thank you, Parna, for answering all the questions from the audience. Yeah, it was really engaging discussion. Parna, you are like, I thought you were having 10 hands and you were typing at the same time with all the 10 hands. There are so many questions coming up. And thanks for answering all these questions.
I learned from Richard.
Yeah. Richard, we are missing him. Yeah, he would be probably joining some other time. Should not be a problem. And everyone, please keep your questions coming. You could use LinkedIn channel to ask question and respond to the question which people are asking. So it would also give you an idea on how to respond, what to search, and what are the other peoples are thinking about. So please engage yourself in the LinkedIn conversation. That would be so nice. Any last word, anyone? Sharik, Nicole, you were great. And Sharik, I would say Nicole played a very gentle customer. So you did not had those tough questions. People were thinking that now Sharik is going to have a hell because he was asking so many questions last time. Let's repeat the same thing with him.
But one thing is there, Ashish. I have a backup. If I don't know something, I can always say, okay, I have one of my colleagues, Ashish is there. He can answer and I have Prasad. So I have backup. So it's not. I'm not alone.
We were rooting for Nicole.
Nice
Come
one.
on, give it back to Sharik.
All right.
That's the luxury I have,
So thanks everyone, and we will see you next week. I will send out the email with the resources. If you are not receiving those emails, ping me and I can add your email address into the distribution group. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.